Welcome along to all my fellow strange historians. This time around, I've got a big announcement to make. As many of you know, I've created quite a number of videos about Hollywood history. I know quite a bit about it. I used to work in Hollywood, still do a little bit as a script doctor. Not the not the most pleasant job in the world. Basically, production companies and studios would send me their scripts and then kind of rework them a little bit, which is actually pretty common. And so I know quite a bit about it. I know about behind the scenes and front of the scenes. And I've had a series that in development for a while called Strange Hollywood History. And I want to talk about stuff like Errol Flynn and Kirk Douglas and Olivia de Havilland and Marlon Brando, Vincent Price, Abbott and Costello. I mean, you name it. And I think many of you know that I'm mainly interested in Hollywood pre 1950, right? My favorite films, 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, 30s, 40s, right? But um, so I was thinking about Vincent Price, and I was thinking about directors, I was thinking about all kinds of stuff, and people have been always been asking me to do stuff about Johnny Depp's movies, and so I'd like to do that. I would like to, and so that's what we're doing. We're actually up and running already with a whole bunch of scripts in development and gathering all the information together. So here's how it's going to go. It's going to be cool. Let me just tell you, it's going to be quite unlike anything else that's out there. And all you have to do is sit back and pour yourself a cup of coffee or a tankard of tea or a mug of mead or a chalice of cider or a flagon filled with any beverage of your choice and join me around this digital campfire. For the most part, it's going to be a podcast. Okay. And the podcast is going to be available on my Patreon. However, there's going to be plenty of shows that are going to require visuals. And so those are going to be on my Patreon also, first and foremost, and then they'll be released on YouTube and other video platforms. And here's how it's going to go. So I've got IMDb pulled up here, and what we'll do, we've been chatting about this for a while now, is we're going to start off talking about his films. So, but ones that that have a historical component to it, or really artsy kind of creative component. And so the early things, not much to deal with here. A Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. I think we're really going to get started with Edward Scissorhands, okay? And the types of things that we're going to talk about. There's not going to be any gossip. There's nothing like that going on here. We're not going to talk about, numbers and box office and the rest of it. What we're going to do, if you saw my announcement, is that we're going to focus on let's just start off with the inspiration for the scripts. And so if it's based on a historic person or event or story or book, definitely going to cover that. If it's stuff like with Tim Burton and he developed the idea over the course of time, we're going to talk about the whole background of the development of the story and the development of the script. We're also going to talk a lot about the production, okay, and like what was involved with getting the production off the ground. But we're also going to talk about characters. Like Johnny Depp, he talks quite a bit about his inspiration for certain characters, right? Like with Captain Jack, right, and some of the others. And so we'll talk about that. But I really want to talk about things like sets, okay? The construction of the set, the designs of the sets. Want to talk a lot about costumes. Johnny Depp has made so many movies where the costumes are, in many ways, characters unto themselves, right? I mean, you strip away those costumes, like Edward Scissorhands. Can you imagine Edward Scissorhands in any other kind of costume? Probably not. And what's fascinating is all this great information that's out there. Like Michael Jackson, I believe early on, he found out about the script and he wanted to play Edward Scissorhands. And he didn't get the role, for whatever reason, that didn't work out. But what's interesting is that you could look at when Edward Scissorhands came out, and then you look at the music video for Bad, right? And you see he's got like that black outfit with the zippers, right, and all the metal and the rest of it. And so you wonder if, I wonder if that was inspired by that. So we're gonna delve into things like that. We're sure going to talk about makeup, without a doubt, because once again, without the makeup, it's a totally different story altogether. We'll talk a lot about Tim Burton. We'll talk about his inspirations. We'll talk about his career. We'll talk about his ideas and how they got developed. We're gonna talk about Vincent Price. I love Vincent Price. I know a lot about his career. In fact, Vincent Price really was the main inspiration for this, because I'm like, oh, okay, let's see what we can do. And it's like, well, what else did he do later on in his life? And then you have something like Tim Burton contacting him for something else. Wasn't it Frankenweenie or something? And sort of give him a whole new resurgence. And one thing that's really cool about Johnny Depp is that in many ways he's kind of like, he has a great appreciation for old Hollywood, right? And so he sought out and befriended a lot of the, like a Marlon Brando type, right? And they were good friends. So we'll even talk about Marlon Brando in the future. So Hollywood history is really the series, and we'll cover all kinds of stuff with that. And then we're going to do the Johnny Depp's strange Hollywood history, right? As an offshoot. And there's going to be a lot. And I've learned from my mistakes on YouTube and podcasts and stuff not to drag these shows on for hours. In fact, I'm streamlining stuff right now. We're taking down a ton of live streams, and I've got people I'm working with right now as editors that are just chopping them up and getting them into the really good stuff, right? Because you spend a lot of time in live streams just kind of talking and chatting and the rest of it. It's a lot of dead weight. And so we're really tightening stuff up. And that's how this series is going to be. So yeah, we're going to talk about the scripts, whether it was based on a historic person or event or story or play. We'll talk about the productions. We're going to talk about the characters. We're going to talk about the sets. We're going to talk about the costumes. We're going to talk about the makeup. We'll talk about Tim Burton and Vincent Price and others, and so much more, including a lot of behind the scenes trivia, as long as it teaches you about the process, the magical process of movie making, right? That's what I like. That's the kind of stuff I like. And I think you're probably the type that likes that too. So, like I said in my announcement, there's never been a series like this before. It's going to be an audio podcast on Patreon, first access there, and then it'll be released as a video series on YouTube and other platforms if and when there's visuals that are applicable to it. And so, if there's anything you want to know about Johnny Depp's films or things that you think I should cover that will be interesting for people from a historic perspective, right? And from a creative perspective, definitely let me know. The easiest way to do that is to join me on Patreon. That's the main place. So like I said, we'll talk about Edward Scissorhands. Whoa, that was back in 1990. And we're going to talk about all kinds of great stuff with that. In fact, let's see if I could play this here.
Those are your hands. Those are your hands. Hold me. I can't.
Oh, Eddie, is there anything you can't do? You take my very breath away, I swear. Look at this.
Goodbye. I love you.
All right. So how awesome is that? And so what I want to do also
True
is
love
use this as
knows
a bit
no
of a
bounds.
springboard to talk about other things that I'm interested in. For example, Obviously, you've got the topiary garden, right? And people love that scene on Edward Scissorhands. And so we're going to talk about maybe the inspiration for that, right? The types of topiary that were used, right? Was it real? Was it not real, right? I know a little bit about that. We've got some behind the scenes photos that we can share and all kinds of cool stories. And then I'll incorporate some other stories about topiary gardens as well. So yes, I know. I have to do it. I know. It's not about Edward Scissorhands, but it is about Edward Scissorhands. So we're going to talk about the costumes. We're going to talk about the production. We're going to talk about Johnny Depp's character, the inspiration. We'll talk about the sets. We'll talk about the locations. So we'll do that, and then we'll with Benny and June. That'll be interesting because I don't recall right now whether his inspiration was it was it Charlie Chaplin or was it more Buster Keaton, right? Or was it a combination of both, right? Some of the scenes in there. I know there was a Charlie Chaplin. I know there was some recreations of that, of one of Charlie Chaplin's famous scenes. But let's see what we got here. Let's listen to a little bit of this. Got Mary Stuart Masterson.
I am not taking
right
this
there.
guy home.
We'll talk about costumes. We'll talk
Did you
about
see
how.
those raisins on TV?
Okay, so
Ones
yeah,
that
you got
sing
the
and
Charlie
dance and
Chaplin
stuff.
there.
They scare me.
Yeah, me too.
It's amazing how something as simple as a hat
I'm her
can make such a big difference with
and I'm her only
representing a character, the type of character they are, right? I mean, are you the type that wears a hat? Right? It takes a certain kind of person to wear a hat. And once you start wearing it, you're like, yeah, I can wear a hat. So we'll have some fun talking about Minnie and June as well. Find out about the production, we'll talk about the characters.
We have to tell
We've
him.
got that. And then we'll go to, well, we got What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Talk about that a little bit. But I really want to stick to the historic stuff. You guys know that that's my area that I'm mainly interested in. And so when we get to Ed Wood, then we're really going to be rocking. Then we're really going to talk about some exciting stuff. So
Critics are calling Ed Wood one of the year's funniest films.
It's science fiction, a heartbreaking romance. It's a supernatural thriller.
Rolling Stone says Johnny Depp is terrific in a hilarious performance.
All right, everybody, let's finish this picture.
Martin Landau is a sure thing Oscar nominee.
My name is Bela Lugosi.
It's Tim Burton's most provocative film.
Do you reject Satan and all his evils?
Sure. Ed Wood, rated R.
You know, Martin Landau, a lot of people don't know this, but when he started his career, his best friend was James Dean. And obviously, we lost James Dean in the 50s. And Martin Landau, I saw him in a great interview, and he said that not too long ago, right? I mean, well, he's I think he's passed away now, right? But he was looking in a window. I think he was walking through New York. I think that's what he was doing, walking through New York or somewhere where there was a storefront, and he saw an image of James Dean in the window, right, the glass, and he looked and he saw James Dean as he remembered him, right, at what, 24 years old, and then he looked at his reflection, and he saw himself as an old man, and he remembered, I guess, what he looked like when he was 24, and so it's just fascinating, right? So what was going on in his mind? Like, here's my friend. Here's my best friend, right? My good friend. And only one of us got to grow up to become an old man. And he was able to see what he looked like in the reflection right next to James Dean. It was a beautiful story. But, we'll talk about Bela Lugosi, right? Because I know quite a bit about that as well. And we'll talk about that character and about his career. And then where he ended up having to what happened with his career. And then once again, Ed Wood kind of, gave him a shot, right? A little bit of a chance. Vincent Price and Tim Burton, there's not the same relationship there, right? I mean, Vincent Price was really a big part of Hollywood history. Bela Lugosi it was as well, but not the same level. And so we'll talk about Ed Wood. We'll talk about some other stuff. Let's see what else we got. Dead Man, beautiful. But I really, like I said, I want to stick to the historic stuff. Donnie Brasco, we'll talk about that a lot because that's based clearly on actual historic characters. and we'll talk about this movie.
And it's your best friend that does it.
Lefty brought him into his world.
Who's this guy? This is Donnie, a friend of mine.
He made him a part of the family.
I die with you, Donnie.
But he never knew the truth.
I'm an undercover agent for the FBI.
Al Pacino.
I don't know what I would do if there's something wrong. I represent you.
Johnny Depp.
If I come out, this guy Lefty dies.
There is a war going on in the mafia family where Joe is undercover.
He's right in the line of fire.
You're becoming like them, you know that?
I am now.
You know what to do when you find that rat? Could be I found him already. I'm your best friend.
Yeah, so that'll be
Coals are
really
hot.
cool, especially since, it's a New York story, which I appreciate. And maybe I'll find some photographs of where actual scenes took place, and we'll get some sets from some set photos as well. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll start getting into things that, we're dealing with, well, like Sleepy Hollow. I mean, good grief. This movie is like made for me. The story certainly was. I know this very, very well. And let's watch a little bit of this. But we'll talk about the original story. We'll talk about the set. Talk about the costume. Talk a little bit about directing, cinematography.
I am Constable Ichabod Crane, sent from New York to investigate murder in Sleepy Hollow.
How much have your superiors explained to you?
Only that the three were slain in open ground, their heads severed from their bodies.
Taken by the headless horseman. Taken back to hell.
He rode a giant black steed. To look at him made your blood run cold. Even today, the Western Woods is a haunted place where brave men will not venture.
We have murders in New York without benefit of ghouls and goblins.
You're a long way from New York, Constable.
Is everyone in this village enthralled to superstition?
We have many things to talk about, even in this backward place.
Excuse my manner. I'm not used to.
Female company?
Murder! The Horseman's killed again!
The assassin is a man of flesh and blood, and I will discover him.
Are you so certain of everything?
Perhaps there's a bit of witch in you, Katrina,
Why do you say that?
because you've bewitched me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about that. And once again, we're trying different things here as far as the lengths of the videos, because some of them will just be like, short things. But if you want to learn about directing, if you want to learn about cinematography, if you want to learn about character development, if you want to learn about mythic storytelling and story structure, these are the types of things we'll talk about. I'll show you where there are pivotal points in the storyline where it's like, okay, now we have entered the Threshold Guardian, and we'll point out who different characters represent in mythic storytelling archetypes, right? So who's the hero, who's the villain, who's the shadow, who's the shapeshifter, right? All the different things that you could learn that typically you might not pay attention to. And so we'll have some fun talking about that, and also miniatures. Tim Burton's is big on that. So we'll spend a lot of time doing that as well and showing photos. So we'll do that. We'll talk about, I'm not going to go through everything here right now, but we'll go through it. We'll talk about From Hell, right? Because that's got the Jack the Ripper component, doesn't it? Let's go ahead and watch this and see what we got. But, I know quite a bit about the Jack the Ripper story. We've made some videos about it. I don't know if they're available right now, but we're editing down the live streams and the long videos that I made. But many of you know that I've done that. And by the time you hear this, if you're listening to this in the future, you'll definitely will see those clips soon.
Hello, sir.
I believe this was done by someone with a working knowledge of dissection.
He can foresee the victims. He could sense the suspects.
This is ritual.
But for the inspector in charge of the world's most infamous investigation,
Inspector, someone told me you claim to dream the answer. That's preposterous.
Where is he?
one mystery
There is most definitely a message here.
will lead him to a truth he never imagined.
You are suspended from duty.
I want you.
From Hell is truly chilling. An engrossing, stylish thriller. And this limited edition DVD has 23 additional scenes and an alternate ending. Johnny Depp as a Graham.
Jack the Ripper's not finished.
From Hell.
One day, men will look back and say that I gave birth to the 20th century.
That's going to be fun. So we'll talk about that. Once again, these aren't going to be movie reviews. This isn't gossipy stuff. It's all going to be about the magic of movie making. Okay? It's about the productions. It's going to be about inspiration. It's going to be about cinematography and directing. It's going to be about character development. It's going to be about mythic storytelling. It's going to teach you about understanding the structure of storytelling. This is going to be great. So, and there's going to be, photos, historic photos. We'll have set photos. We'll have all kinds of stuff. And by the way, if there's anybody out there who has worked with Johnny Depp, I actually have friends that have. And so maybe I'll do some interviews during all of this to talk about different types of projects that they worked on and what it's like to work with him and to be on the set. And so maybe we'll do that too. But I've always worked with researchers. I've always worked with different script writers. If you want credit, you'll get it. If you don't, then you won't. And so it's impossible for me to know everything in the world. And so if you think you have something of great value to share, go on a Patreon and contact me and we'll talk about it. All right, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. So yes, of course, we're going to talk about that as well. Let's see if we got, this is how it started at all, right? As far as him.
You don't know what this is, do you? Aztec gold. The heathen gods placed upon the gold a terrible curse. 10 years we've searched. Every last piece we have found, save for this. Hello, Bobby.
They've taken Elizabeth.
Welcome aboard the Black Pearl.
We must save her. Where do we start?
Jack Sparrow. He talked about the Black Pearl.
Make a deal with him. He can lead us to it.
You forget your place. You are a blacksmith.
If you spring me from this cell, I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass.
You're a pirate.
Forgot one very important thing, mate. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow. Not sure I deserve it. You're not facing normal pirates. Cruel, demented, vicious pirates, to be certain.
Say goodbye. Goodbye.
But cruel, demented, vicious pirates who cannot be killed.
The moonlight shows us for what we really are.
That's interesting.
We are cursed men.
I hardly believe in ghost stories anymore.
You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. Gents, you all remember Captain Jack Sparrow. Kill him. I'm gonna teach you the meaning of pain.
You like pain? Try wearing a corset.
Here they come.
Pirates of the Caribbean. The Curse of the Black Pearl.
I may have deserved it.
All right, I'm really looking forward to talking about that one. I want to talk about the production. I want to talk about the set design. I want to talk about the locations. I want to talk about the costumes. I want to talk about the development of the project. I also want to talk about special effects, right? That quite a number of special effects in there. And so we'll talk about that and what it's like for actors to be able to interact with people with you have to convince yourself in your mind that what you see in front of you isn't what is actually in front of you because of in post-production, they're going to be doing this and that and the rest of it. And so you have to react to it as it's going to be for the movie goer, right? Not so much for what the actor sees in front of them. So we'll talk about that, and uh, we'll talk about the actors that are involved, and we'll talk about Orlando Bloom. Obviously, he became a big star from that. So we'll talk about that, and then let's see what else we got. There's so many others to talk about. Finding Neverland. You guys know that that's sort of thing that's up my alley as well. So we'll talk about that since it's based on a true story.
Who do you belong to?
Excuse me, sir. You're standing on my sleeve.
I might point out you're lying under my bench.
Do you mind us playing with your dog?
No, go on.
So sorry, my boy's bothering you.
J.M. Barrie, pleased to meet you.
J.M. Barrie, the author.
He was looking for the inspiration he had lost.
Your play this evening.
I think I can do better.
They were longing for the family they once had.
He died, her husband. He left her with 4 boys.
What began as a chance encounter
Perhaps we'll see you here tomorrow then.
will forever change their lives.
James, may I take your hat?
You are not my father.
Peter's a different boy since his father died.
It's just a dog.
Peter.
Just a dog? With a wee bit of imagination, I can see the great bear Porthos.
Striving to be some kind of public eccentric.
Bang, bang, bang.
You should be aware, James, what some people have been saying.
Have you no idea how much your friendship has already cost my daughter?
Boys need a father.
What are you suggesting?
Miramax Films presents
It's the best you've written, James.
the story of a man
What's it like, Neverland?
One day I'll take you there.
who awakened the world's imagination
Young boys should never be sent to bed. They always wake up a day older.
and the people
I need to go on pretending with you.
who inspired him.
You have a man who is a fairy, right? And this girl calls herself Tinker.
That is Neverland. Treehouse.
Johnny Depp, Kate Winslet, Julie Christie, and Dustin Hoffman.
You can visit Neverland anytime you like.
How?
By believing, Peter. Just believe.
Finding Neverland. Now available on DVD.
So when we talk about things like this, of course, we'll talk about the film with Johnny Depp in it. But as I said previously, we're going to use this series as a springboard to talk about other things as well. I mean, after all, this is about Sir J.M. Barrie, right? And so we'll talk about him, we'll talk about his career, and we'll talk about Peter Pan, and then we'll talk about how that story and this gentleman were able to inspire this great story. And we'll find out, if we can, a little bit about Johnny Depp and how he learned about J.M. Barrie. Does he just tackle the script on his own and just do his own thing? Does he try to find out about him? Does he speak to the family and the friends? Does he watch films and just try to learn more? And by films, I mean interviews. Does he watch, to learn about the characters? Because we do know that he's done that in the past, as any other good actor would. And so we'll talk about Finding Neverland. We'll talk about the time period where it takes place. We'll get some information about the location. So we'll do that. The Libertine. Did you ever see this movie? Let me tell you why this movie is great to me. What I don't like is when I watch movies. Well, let's go ahead and get this playing first. You can watch this a couple of minutes.
Allow me to be frank at the commencement.
Actually, let me interrupt for a second. So what I don't like is when you watch movies that takes place in the, name it, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and they're lit up so freaking well, you could do brain surgery in the rooms where they're shooting, right? You watch Dangerous Liaisons, you watch Valmont, and so it's like, oh my God, where's all this light coming from? You watch this movie, and I don't know enough about how the production was done, but the cinematographer did an incredible job. It seems to me, okay, and I don't know if this is true, and I'm just saying, it's like, it's designed anyway to look like it was shot by candlelight. I mean, listen, have you ever had your, the lights go out, right? You ever have your electric goes out and it's like, whoa, life is dark, and you try to find your way to the bathroom, you try to find your way to the kitchen, and you have nothing working, right? You've got your refrigerator, you open it up, there's no light on, and you're like, well, okay, what's this all about? And people used to live like this, and they used to walk home like that, right? And the streets were muddy and disgusting and smelled like manure. Yeah. And so this movie, it feels dark and sweaty and dirty. And it's like they did a beautiful, beautiful job. And we'll talk about the Earl of Rochester. We'll talk about his life. We'll talk a bit about his career. And like I said, we'll use this as a springboard to be able to talk about historic subjects that you and I are already interested in. But but we'll get started with stuff like this, since for many, watching a movie is a historic portrayal. But is it always? Not really. How do you capture anybody's life in an hour and a half or a couple of hours, whatever it is? And so you get a good idea. But we'll dive a little bit deeper. So let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this.
You will not like me. Ladies, an announcement. I am up for it. All the time.
You abducted me in a coach like this when I was still a virgin heiress.
And did you like abduction?
Passionately.
I'm come to train you in your acting.
Your reputation being what it is, I thought you meant something different.
I have, I hope, many reputations. How exciting. The royal finger ain't beckoning me.
People listen to you, Johnny. Elizabeth had her Shakespeare. You can be mine.
Then dance 6 naked men and women.
It's very amusing because in France, he would be executed for this.
I hand you a chance, and what do you give me?
A monument to your reign. Those who do not like you fall into 2 categories, the stupid and the envious.
I wish you to be my eyes and ears on his Earlship.
I am his lover, but I am your true subject.
Life has no purpose. I am the cynic of our golden age.
What's he doing?
I believe he is on the verge of greatness.
When did I banish him? 3 months ago. Bring him back now.
That is it. That is my prologue. I am John Wilmot, 2nd Earl of Rochester, and I do not want you to like me.
Oh yeah. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this one, and who knows, maybe we'll even do some John Malkovich imitations. That always comes in handy. In fact, we'll use this once again as a springboard to talk about other things like John Malkovich's career, which has included his share of historic projects as well. Another thing we'll talk about is, well, let's go ahead and get back. If there were other versions of it. So you got, for example, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And we all know that it's based on a book. And we all know that there was the previous one with Gene Wilder. We know Gene Wilder wasn't too thrilled about it being remade. I don't know how he felt about it once it was done. But we'll talk about that. We'll dive into Tim Burton's career. We'll talk about Corpse Bride. We'll talk about animation, stop motion animation. We'll talk about how a film like this was made, right? And once again, what was the inspiration for it? How did Johnny Depp get involved in it? What's involved with creating a film like this? So we're going to talk about movie making, about movie history. We're also going to talk about all kinds of cool stuff, and we're going to have some fun with this one. And then let's see what else we've got. This is, it's a lifetime project, to be honest, because you get something just like Sleepy Hollow, for example. You could probably make 50 videos just on that. And so be on the lookout. Join my Patreon, because that's going to be a lot of exclusive stuff and also first look stuff and a lot of audio only, and also a lot of videos that won't be seen elsewhere. And then other things will be released on YouTube and other platforms, but this is going to be quite unlike any other series, anything anybody else has ever done. Once again, it's not gossip. It's not, Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp. No, this is about movie making. And Johnny Depp, thankfully, is one of these Hollywood actors who has taken his career in a route that others have not, right? Where it would attract somebody like me and somebody like you, if you're interested in Hollywood history. And because of his involvement, a lot of films got made that perhaps under other circumstances would not have gotten made. And so I love films with based in history. I love films that deal with costumes. And so Johnny Depp happened to embrace that sort of that interest as well. So we'll talk about that. Got some other Pirates of the Caribbean here. Wow, that kept him busy, didn't it? So we've got, wow. All right, so you got those. Sweeney Todd, we'll talk about that. We know it's quite a bit of history with that. We'll talk about the songs. We'll talk about the production. Let's watch a little bit of this real quick.
This is the tale of an ordinary man who had everything
Barker, his name was. Benjamin Barker.
until a man of power stole his freedom, destroyed his family, and banished him.
May the Lord have mercy on your soul.
For life. And in his sorrow, a new man was born.
15 years dreaming I might come home to a wife and child.
Benjamin Barker.
Not Barker. Sweeney Todd now. And he will have his revenge. Where's my wife?
She's gone. And he's got your daughter.
Judge Turpin.
You've got to leave this all behind you now.
No. These are desperate times. Desperate measures are called for.
All right! You, sir! No one's in the chair. Come on, come on! Sweeney's waiting. I want you, bleeders. You, sir! Two, sir. Welcome to the grave. I will have vengeance. I will have salvation.
I can guarantee the closest shave you will ever know.
May the good Lord smile on you.
You're pocket mad.
The years no doubt have changed me. How about a shave? At last, my arm is complete again.
That's all very well. But what are we going to do about him?
Yeah, that's going to be cool. Once again, we'll talk about the production. We're going to talk about special effects. We'll talk about costumes. We'll talk about incorporating songs into movies. We'll spend also some time talking about characters and character development and what motivates characters. For example, in this story, it's a story of revenge, right? Seeking vengeance, and how, he's just kind of gets quiet for 15 years or whatever it is. And then, got his revenge. And so that's kind of interesting to see how a character develops like that. And there was a TV show recently. Well, I won't talk about it. But it's just about the idea that you would think somebody's gone for a long period of time, that they would have some kind of spiritual awakening or whatever it is, and they would start off life afresh. But that doesn't necessarily make for good stories. Certainly doesn't make for good movies. And so stuff like this has been fascinating for a lot of people because, well, here's what I think I'm going with here, is that there are movies that have been made where somebody is clearly, let's just say, the bad guy. But at the same time, you got to understand their motivation. So I guess the most famous example is Bonnie and Clyde. You watch Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, and you are on their side the entire movie. the entire time. These were murderers. These were bank robbers. These were very, very bad people. But meanwhile, they get shot at the end. And you're like, oh my God, they got shot, right? And so that's what happens. That's what happens with a lot of things. And so here you've got the story of Sweeney Todd. We'll talk about it more in the future, but here's a guy murdering people, right? But at the same time, you're like, yeah, get your revenge. And so, we'll talk about stuff like that. We'll talk about character development. We'll talk about, like I said, with mythic storytelling, who's the hero, who's the villain, who's the shadow. So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that. By the way, we're going to be bouncing around a lot. And so it's not like, okay, we're going to talk about The Libertine, and that'll be the only videos for the next, 10 years. And then it's like, oh, well, sooner or later, I know he'll get to, whatever, Sweeney Todd. No, we'll bounce around a little bit, but I'll create playlists, I think. And that way you'll be able to easily say, well, okay, this is the one that I'm interested in. Although the search feature might help with that. And then we're probably not going to talk about SpongeBob SquarePants. I know that many of you are saying, but what about the historical component? There's so much to learn. Yeah, I can't cover everything. So I think SpongeBob SquarePants will probably have to skip over if you don't mind. Public Enemies, definitely. Oh boy, we're going to talk about that. Yeah. Dillinger, sure. I know quite a bit about Dillinger, so we'll talk about that. Oh yeah, look at this. So we got John Dillinger, we got Babyface Nelson, and Pretty Boy Floyd, all of whom I know quite a bit about. And so we'll talk about them. We'll talk about the real historic characters and what they did. And oh, this is a good scene. I remember this scene. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk. Oh, wait, that was the Biograph, wasn't it? That was the Biograph Theater in Chicago. I've been to that. And so we'll talk about the Biograph. We'll talk about its role in John Dillinger's life. We'll talk about.
Your task will be to get John Dillinger. Are you up to that task, Agent Purvis?
Absolutely, sir. And we are pursuing hardened killers.
Play a game, Mr. President. It's called Spin the Dial.
That's your money, mister?
Yes.
We're here for the bank's money, not yours. Put it away.
Oh, the whole country thinks you're a damn hero.
Robbing banks is getting tougher.
We're having too good a time today. We ain't thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah, well, you ought to.
Johnny! Put some clothes on this.
They're extraditing you.
Where to?
Indiana.
Why? I have absolutely nothing I want to do in Indiana.
Johnny, how long does it take you to go through a bank?
All right, so we'll talk about that. It's interesting, Johnny Depp, and how he incorporates mannerisms for a character. And it's interesting, we'll talk about how even something as simple as the mustache, right? For those of you who know who John Dillinger was, or you've seen other films, it's amazing what Johnny Depp was able to do with something as simple as a smirk, right? Where he was able to, and it's not the Johnny Depp smirk, it's actually a John Dillinger smirk. For those of you who are familiar with photographs of him and, based on reports on how he would have this kind of, he's a very good looking dude in real life. John Dillinger, very charismatic, very, very likable. Everybody liked him. And so there's a good story. We'll talk about Public Enemies quite a bit. And then see what else. I'm trying to wrap this up. We're going to get started. For those of you watching this live, right, because we're going to do this as a premiere, you'll watch this. We'll start having the videos up pretty soon. So we'll talk about, what else do we got? Alice in Wonderland. Don't even get me started. We'll talk about that forever. We'll talk about The Rum Diary, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I actually, we'll talk about that. And then what else do we got? We will discuss Dark Shadows. Yes, Barnabas Collins. We'll talk about that. The Lone Ranger. Most certainly we will talk about that. And then Into the Woods. We'll discuss that as well. What else do we got? We've got some of these things I've not seen, to be honest with you, but it's not like there isn't plenty. Murder on the Orient Express. That was fascinating. And then what else? What else? What else? There's so much to discuss. Okay, we're all the way up to pretty much 2023 at this point. But he does have some other projects coming up, doesn't he? And we'll talk about that as well. In fact, wasn't there one that was just announced? Surprised it's not here. And then, so we've got plenty to keep us busy without any hesitation. And like I said, it's not going to be, this isn't going to be like the Johnny Depp channel. Don't worry about that. We talk about the history of art. the history of architecture. We talk about historic people, places, and events. And a lot of Johnny Depp's films showcases historic people, places, and events. So it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've already started piecing it together. And so starting tomorrow, well, depending on when you listen to this, there already will be plenty of stuff. And so this concludes this big announcement about this episode, which is an offshoot of Strange History of Hollywood. This will be Johnny Depp's Strange History in Hollywood. And so tell me what you think. I mean, do you like this idea? Do you hate it? There's no way you hate it. Tell me what types of Johnny Depp movies you want to talk about and what sort of things. Is there anything you want me to dig into and find out about? This right here. Let's go ahead and play this, shall we? Let's back this up.
Et voici Jeanne Beaubernier, dite l'ange.
Un ange tombé du ciel. Je vous attendais, moi. Je t'aime.
C'est pas ça l'amour.
Ne pensez-vous pas qu'il serait temps de changer de vie?
Pour aller où?
Jean Dubarry veut que je vous présente au roi.
La comtesse Jeanne Dubarry.
Surtout, ne regardez pas le roi dans les yeux. Ce serait perçu par la cour comme une invitation.
Une invitation à quoi?
À la bagatelle.
Père, nous sommes devenus la risée de Versailles à cause de vos égarements.
Le Premier ministre ne va pas tolérer que vous laissiez une fille des rues côtoyer votre entourage.
Cette jeune femme est mon entourage. Je vous aime.
Nous comptons tous sur vous pour que cette misérable femme soit chassée de la cour.
Le roi a d'autres maîtresses?
Vous êtes en train de découvrir le côté sombre du roi. Vous êtes sans danger, madame.
You see, films like that are right up my alley. Right up my alley. I don't care who's starring in it. That's what I'm watching. Things like that. And so you probably are the same way, yeah? And so if you enjoyed this video and you're excited about this new series, do me a favor and like this video, kindly share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And please become a member of my channel and also join me on Patreon, because members and Patreons will get exclusive content that nobody else is going to see. If you want to support my research and hear more more shows like this, click on the link below. You can see how you can make a donation directly to me. I'm thinking about doing some traveling, if possible, to maybe some of the sets, different locations, that, Sleepy Hollow. There's all kinds of cool stuff that can be done, not right away, but, over the course of time. We've got plenty to do. It's going to be great. And once again, it's not just going to be the Johnny Depp stuff, although it's a heck of a lot, but we'll go off in some different directions as well with some of the people he's worked with: Marlon Brando, Vincent Price, Tim Burton, and John Malkovich, and so many others. It's going to be great. I'm very, very excited. If you saw what's been pieced together so far, you would be as excited as well. And so that's what we got. Do me a favor and be kind to humans, all of them, no matter who they are. Be kind to other humans, online and off. And please be kind to all non-human animals, including don't eat them. They don't like it. And do yourself a favor, and please go to a local shelter today. If you can go to a kill shelter, that would even be better. And please adopt a cat or a dog. You'll be very glad that you did. They might be in a bad mood in the beginning. They're going to be scared. They're going to be shaking. They might upset you. Give them a break, all right? Give them a chance. They're terrified, right? Just, cut them some slack and show them that the love, and give them the home that they deserve, okay? So yeah, if you can go to a local shelter, adopt a cat or a dog, you'll be very glad that you did. I'm excited. I'm excited. A lot of people who already know about this are excited as well. And so until next time, my fellow strange historians, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys. I'll see you soon.